The Ace Pad Tech new review. It's been a while since I've bashed on the Ace Pad Tech Hall Effect keyboard, and I've been told repeatedly that these keyboards have been improved due to the efforts of Xmit and Mastrop, although, well, I guess it's just Mastrop now since Xmit wasn't branded on the last keyboards. Yeah. Awkward. In my last review, everyone said I was too harsh, and I told them, you know what? Fine, sure. I'll give the board another chance after a revision. And now it's been multiple revisions. The removal of Xmit's name, to my surprise. There are a lot of versions out in the wild in different form factors. So here's the newest one, the new Ace Pad Tech keyboard. This one's a linear one like my previous one, also in the TKL format. This time I've decided to opt for a nicer CNC'd acrylic case, and the price shows, as my original one was south of $150, and this one was $200 including shipping. Oof. But you know what? This case is way better than that bamboo epoxy sandwich that was offered in the first round, especially since it has all these groovy RGs and Bs, which look decent enough with this case. So, initially I almost canceled my purchase for this keyboard. While these keyboards run on Mastrop every now and then, you can at any time just go to the manufacturer's site and order the keyboards directly. Maybe it'll be $10 to $20 more expensive than a Mastrop run, but hey, if you don't want to wait for the next run, they're possible to obtain, which is nice. So after I put my order in, it didn't ship for about a week to even leave the factory. So I figured maybe they're not going to ship it. Maybe they have some new kind of deal where they don't do that anymore. I can put this $200 toward another project. Well, the day right after I put in my notice for cancellation, I received a call at 8 p.m. my time from a Chinese phone number. It was actually one of the factory reps explaining to me that they haven't shipped my keyboard because the blue keycaps pictured in the listing weren't available yet. Those were still undergoing manufacturing. They did have an all-white set that they could throw on and ship to me immediately. I'm like, you know what? Fine, if it's ready to ship immediately, let's do it. I uncanceled my order, and they 2-day DHL'd it to me from China to my doorstep. That was a nice touch. So, these keycaps still come in a pretty black, nondescript box. Like the older ones, it makes it easier for whoever to slap a logo on top. So included in the box was an instruction manual, a cable, keycap puller, and 3 additional switches. The cable and keycap puller cost nothing to them, but it's better to have them than not. The manual's translation is mediocre, but hey, you can understand it well enough, so that's good enough. Contact Macy for any issues. Keyboard control. The picture of the 3 layouts demonstrating the function commands are pretty blurry and hard to read, to be perfectly honest, printed on the black and white in pretty low quality. There are also disassembly instructions, which is a nice random touch, but most of these keyboards are easy enough to disassemble without needing that. The case is a very simple 2-piece design with no visible screw holes on the top, and that's a nice visual touch. The only logo on the top is below the down arrow, and it's a simple 3 letters APT. On the right side under the page down, we have the caps lock and the Windows lock notification LEDs. The OEM keycaps on the case aren't as nice as I'd like, and the case isn't as high profile as I'd like, but it works since they're aiming for a thinner keyboard, which I'll explain in a moment. Layout, normal 87 key, RGB LED per switch. Let's move on to the bottom, where the bottom of the keyboard is interesting. It's secured with 12 screws, and on the inside of the bottom plate as well, there are 2 more screws for the riser feet, which can be removed for those who prefer a flatter typing style. So when we take off the bottom plate, we can see where all the cost of this keyboard went. For the sake of having a thinner keyboard, they CNC'd spaces in the bottom plate for all of the SMD components. Oof. Honestly, it's really nice and kind of cool that they did this, but unnecessary. I would have been okay paying less money for a slightly thicker board if it had a noticeable effect on production costs. But despite this CNC'd bottom, they had a very nifty space-saving, cost-saving PCB production method. You'll notice on this PCB that there are labels for both the TKL and the 60% version. You'll also notice that there's a USB mini pinouts for the 60% location as well as the mini port for the TKL. So basically they make all of their TKL and 60% PCBs out of this master, and they put the port on the right one and then cut it down the size. Simple enough, saves them money. I like that engineering idea. So you may be wondering, how do Hall effect switches work? Are they different from your standard MX box switches? Are they different from Topra? What are they like? What aren't they like? It's pretty simple. Hall effect switches works with magnets and sensors. On the bottom of every slider is a small magnet, and on the PCB there's a sensor. When the switch goes down, the magnet moves down, and after the sensor detects the magnet passing a predefined point, the keyboard will register that as an actuation for that switch. And this means that the switch actuations don't have a physical mechanism, and it's based on sensing a sensor instead. So in theory, the switch will last as long as the sensor will be able to detect the magnet, with no physical wear like you might have with an MX Leaf. So I think this is a really, really cool technology, but I think this is a very poor implementation on how they did it. And to explain, let's take apart some of these switches, or at least one of them. Fortunately, they included 3 extra switches in the box. Each switch has a pair of clips that hold it onto the plate, and each pair of clips onto the plate also has a pair of clips that hold onto the stem. After undoing all of that and keeping track of the spring, we can see the magnet on the bottom of the slider. When this gets close enough to the PCB, an actuation is registered. And this is cool because normally for an MX switch, a leaf must be pressed, and that's another point of friction. Using Hall effect means we can reduce the amount of friction by at least 1 point. And the reason I say the execution is poor is that these are still really scratchy switches. There are 4 main points of actuations, the 4 corners, which also act as guides to help your switch not be so wobbly as you press it down, but that still fails in its attempt to detract wobbliness, and it fails bad. Stock, I'd say these aren't anywhere as smooth as I'd hope. They're about as scratchy, if not slightly scratchier, than stock MX switches, and not the retooled variety. That puts them pretty low in smoothness. But how about typing experience? Well, based off that, it's mediocre at best, not good enough for $200. Even if it went on Massdrop for $150, I'd say pass and spend your money on something better. These keys have an empty feel to them. The stabilizers rattle, the spacebar is mushy, the keycaps are overly textured, a rough PBT double shot with POM for backlight, and an OEM profile. The springs crunch and the keys get crooked. Wait. The keys get crooked? Yes, this is what I mean. Take any keycap and you rotate it slightly with your fingers and it will stay in that position. Yep, that's how these are. And if that doesn't bother you, I don't know what will, because in terms of everything else this keyboard has to offer, it's meh. The per key RGB is, it's nice, has different options, different colors. The effects are smooth enough and it looks pretty decent on the frosted acrylic case. But when you have this whole package put together, even though the case does look nice, it's a subpar, substandard keyboard. I would choose, for the same price tag, any MX board, OEM or custom otherwise. This is a poor revival of a classic technology. Hall effect keyboards used to be pretty cool, but the coolness in this keyboard is just cold feet. Thank you for watching. Feel free to check out the rest of my content. If you like what you see, feel free to support me. Patreon, Amazon affiliate links down below. Subscribe, etc., etc., etc. Thanks for watching.